Hello and welcome to another complete Cambridge IGCSE PE lesson. In this video we'll break down and simplify 9 recent past exam questions on Chapter 2, the Respiratory System. If you enjoy this video, consider subscribing to the channel, give the video a thumbs up and visit my channel page for short summary videos and my resource store by clicking the link in the description for complete revision and teaching materials. Let's begin. Question number 1 on topic 2.1 and 2.2. You can head down to the description and find short summary videos containing everything you need to know on Chapter 2, the respiratory system. So if at any point you don't understand a question, head down there, get a recap of that key information, then come back and have a go. The diagram shows part of the respiratory system. Name the structures labelled A and B. So a really simple question with name as your command word, worth 2 marks. The structure A there, that's your windpipe. And the technical term for that is the trachea or trachea. And then B is the diaphragm, that large muscular sheet which assists in the process of breathing. So a really simple question. There's your mark scheme, 1 mark for each named structure. Okay, number 2, on topic 2.2 this time, describe the role of the structure labelled B during normal breathing. So following on from the previous question, essentially this is asking us to describe the role of the diaphragm during normal breathing. And for this one we need to talk about inspiration, which is breathing in, and expiration, which is breathing out. And it's worth 4 marks, so we need to make sure we make 4 distinct points. Okay, so inspiration first. As we breathe in, the diaphragm contracts and flattens. That means it moves downwards essentially. From a domed position here, it's going to move downwards to a flattened position. This increases the volume of the chest cavity, which you could see if the diaphragm were to move down there and flatten, it would increase the area or volume inside the chest cavity where the lungs sit. And this lowers the air pressure in the lungs, which of course enables higher pressure atmospheric air, so from the outside atmosphere, to rush into the lungs. Okay, during expiration, and I'm just going to make the opposite points here, the diaphragm relaxes and domes upwards. So it's doing the opposite thing now, it's doming upwards. Of course, that's going to decrease the volume in the chest and increase the air pressure in the lungs. So completely the opposite points made. Okay, where are we going to get the marks from? I would have actually got 6 marks if they were available here, hence the 2 orange ticks there. But just as I've mentioned in the example answer, as we breathe in or during inspiration, the diaphragm is going to contract and become flatter. That's going to cause the chest volume to increase and cause the air pressure in the lungs to decrease. And we have completely the opposite points for expiration. So 2 for inspiration, 2 for expiration, and you're going to get all 4 marks. Not too complicated once you've had a couple of goes at this one and got used to the mark scheme. Question number 3, topic 2.3 now on breathing volumes. Describe a named breathing volume. That of course means you're going to need to name a breathing volume and state how it changes, if at all, during exercise. This one's worth 3 marks, but it's really simple to understand where they come from since you were given these 3 very clear prompts in your answer booklet. So, breathing volume. You get to choose which of the 4 named breathing volumes you want to include in your answer. I've gone for vital capacity here. You'll then just need to describe that breathing volume, and the best way to do this is learn your definitions. So I've just included a definition of vital capacity, which is the maximum volume of air that can be exhaled after a full inhalation or full in-breath. Okay, let's just have a quick look at the mark scheme to verify that one and have a look at some of the other options of breathing volumes we could have talked about. So tidal volume was the first one, which is the volume or amount of air that enters or leaves with each breath. So this is more about the depth of our normal breaths. And these, of course, increase when we exercise due to the increased demand for oxygen. Vital capacity is the one that I chose for my example answer, but we could have also gone for residual volume, or the volume or amount of air left in the lungs after you breathe out as hard as possible. So after that vital capacity, that maximum out breath, how much air is left in the lungs at the end, that's called the residual volume, and that one doesn't change either. Finally though, we have minute ventilation, which does increase during exercise, just like tidal volume, and minute ventilation is the volume or amount of air breathed in or out per minute. So whereas tidal volume was per breath, minute ventilation is the amount of air breathed per minute essentially. And of course when we exercise, that's going to increase because our breaths are deeper and we're taking more of them. We're breathing faster as well. Okay, topic 2.1 now. The diagram shows part of the pathway of air into the body. Identify the components labelled A and B. So already we're seeing a similar question to the one we looked at just a moment ago. We've got to identify a couple of components. A, again, is the windpipe, so that's the trachea again. But the B here, we have the bronchioles. So the trachea splits off into the two bronchi, which branch off again into these smaller branches called bronchioles. And then the final structure at the end of the bronchioles, we have the alveoli. So you really need to remember clearly the structures of the respiratory system. Okay, and there is your mark scheme to confirm. Let's move on. Another one on topic 2.1, state and explain two characteristics of alveoli that assist gaseous exchange. So state, we talked about in our previous video on the skeletal and muscular system. State as a command word is very similar to name, and that just basically means you need to come up with or name two characteristics of the alveoli. So there's our first two marks, and we're going to get the remaining 2 marks from explaining how those two characteristics of the alveoli assist with gaseous exchange, which is the process by which oxygen and carbon dioxide either move from the air in the lungs into the bloodstream or the other way around, so from the bloodstream and back into the lungs where we can exhale that air. So a couple of characteristics that I've gone for. I've said that the alveoli have moist walls, and how does this help with gaseous exchange? Well, the moisture on the outside of the walls of the alveoli helps gases to dissolve, and that helps them to pass through the walls of the alveoli much more easily, thus speeding up that process of gaseous exchange. Okay, so 2 marks there for that first characteristic. The second one, the walls are only 1 cell thick. They have very thin walls. How does this assist gaseous exchange? Well, gases have a very short distance over which to diffuse. Obviously, thinner walls mean a shorter distance over which those gases have to travel, either from the alveoli to the blood or vice versa. Okay, so we'll just have a quick look at the mark scheme there to verify that one. So we could have gone for 1 cell thick, which I did. We could have also said that the alveoli are surrounded by a big network of capillaries. They have a great blood supply, which of course increases the amount of blood available for the transfer of gases. So we need that blood to be in contact with the alveoli essentially so that gases can move from one to the other. We could have also said that the alveoli have a large surface area. Collectively, it's often said that if we break all the alveoli open and lie them flat next to each other, it would cover a tennis court. From one human's lungs, their alveoli would have a big enough surface area to cover a tennis court, and that obviously means that we have a big area for gaseous exchange. Lots of contact between the air or the gases and the bloodstream, speeding up the rate of diffusion there as well. We've got that the walls of the alveoli are moist, which we also mentioned. And our final point there down at the bottom, the walls of the alveoli also contain elastic fibers, which allows the walls to increase their surface area slightly during inspiration. So what does that mean? When we breathe in, because the alveolar walls are elastic, the alveoli themselves can stretch a little bit, thus increasing that surface area even more and speeding up diffusion even more. Okay, so let's move on. Topic 2.3 now. Again, if you don't understand this question, head down to the description, watch the relevant short summary video, then come back and attempt it. Describe each of the following breathing volumes and state the change, if any, in each volume during exercise. So this is again a complete duplicate of the previous question we had on breathing volumes. And the reason I include all of these is so that you can see the patterns. You can see that these questions come up frequently, and therefore I need to remember my 4 breathing volumes, and I need to know the effect that exercise had on those volumes. So again, this one's worth 4 marks. It's essentially the same question as we just looked at, so I'll go through this one nice and quickly, but I've chosen a couple of different breathing volumes this time. Minute ventilation is the volume of air inhaled or exhaled per minute. That's the description of my breathing volume. And then what happens during exercise? Well, the minute ventilation goes up. due to the fact that we're breathing faster and we're taking deeper breaths. Okay, second one, vital capacity, the maximum volume of air exhaled after a full inhalation or in-breath. So we breathe in as deeply as we can, and then we breathe out as much as we can. The volume that we breathe out is vital capacity, and that one doesn't change during exercise. So a very similar mark scheme to the one we looked at before as well, so we don't need to study this one in too much detail, but it becomes quite clear from attempting these questions. You really need to know your breathing volumes and the effect that exercise has on them. Okay, topic 2.2 now. Describe the function of the intercostal muscles in normal breathing. So we already had this question for the diaphragm, but that one was worth 4 marks. This one's only worth 2, so we don't need to make as many points. The intercostal muscles are, of course, the other set of muscles involved in breathing. So we looked at the diaphragm already, and now the intercostal. So the intercostal muscles contract, moving the rib cage upwards and outwards during inspiration. So I've made a nice point there about what happens to the intercostal muscles and their function whilst breathing in first. And then during expiration, or when breathing out, they relax, causing the ribs to move down and inwards during expiration. So 2 points made, a fair bit of detail included there. The mark scheme suggests that we need to say that they contract to expand the chest cavity, or we could have also said that they contract to move the ribs up and out during inspiration, okay? Moving the rib cage upwards and outwards during inspiration. So that's the point that I've made. And then for expiration, they relax to reduce the chest cavity, or they relax to allow the ribs to move downwards and inwards during expiration. So they relax, causing the ribs to move down and inwards during expiration. That's the one I've gone for there. So 2 points needed for the 2 marks. Topic 2.3 for the next question. Minute ventilation increases during exercise. We know that one by now. This is the 3rd time that minute ventilation has come up in a question or mark scheme. Define the term minute ventilation and describe 2 benefits of an increased minute ventilation during exercise. So let's define it first. Minute ventilation is the volume of air inhaled or exhaled per minute. Okay, so we've got 1 mark for that already. But now we need to describe 2 benefits of an increased minute ventilation during exercise. So 2 benefits of us inhaling more air per minute. Okay, well, first benefit, if we breathe more, if we're taking more air in, it allows more oxygen to enter the bloodstream via the alveoli. So we're getting more oxygen as a result of that increased minute ventilation. Benefit 2, it also increases the waste product removal, or the rate of waste product removal. So if we're getting more air in, then we're going to be more effective at removing carbon dioxide. Sorry, that's a result of us breathing more air out. It's the same point though. And we're also going to break down lactic acid more efficiently. So mark scheme, let's have a quick look. What do we have? Any of these 2 benefits. So it increases the volume of oxygen into the body, which I have mentioned here with my first point. It increases the volume of carbon dioxide removed from the body, which I mentioned here. It increases oxygen supply to the muscles, because of course if we're breathing more oxygen in, or more air in, then we're going to have more delivered to our working muscles, and that allows us to keep going for longer, particularly if we're an aerobic athlete. And then it increases the efficiency of diffusion of oxygen through the alveoli, or the capillaries, and it reduces the onset of lactic acid, or speeds up the removal of lactic acid. So a few points you could have included there as well. Let's move on. 2.3 again. Describe the changes, if any, in each of the following breathing volumes during exercise. We're really seeing some patterns here. And again, what are the changes to these breathing volumes during exercise for 2 marks? I'm including every single question that comes up in past exams. That's why we're getting duplicates, but hopefully you can see what you need to learn from this. Residual volume, there is no change, as we mentioned before, whereas tidal volume increases during exercise. That's the depth of your breaths, how deep your breaths are during normal breathing, and there is the mark scheme to confirm that. Okay, so that concludes our session on Chapter 2, the respiratory system. Remember to like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video, and leave a comment down below if you have any suggestions for how these videos could be improved. As always, I hope you found this lesson useful, and I'll see you next time for 8 questions on Chapter 3, the circulatory system.